Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Suraj. I'll be discussing certain fundamental concepts in ECG which are important for not only for the NEET PG examination but also for day-to-day practice. So this would be a three-part video, and in the first part I'm going to be discussing along these headings. So as you all know, Etherwin, this gentleman standing here, was the first one who invented ECG in the year 1901. So he used an instrument called as a string galvanometer. This instrument which is shown here, and used a 3-lead system initially to get this ECG tracing. And by 1910, ECG had already become the most common investigation used to assess cardiac function. So ECG is nothing but the depiction of a complex electrical event which is happening in the cardiac muscle fibers. So as you all know, how the cardiac action potential generated. So say this is the cardiac muscle fiber. So normally in resting phase, the positive charge is outside the cell and the negative charge is inside the cell. So this is in resting phase. So when there is an impulse put on this muscle fiber, that is cardiac impulse which is generated by the SA node, there is reversal of this polarity. So there is negative outside and positive inside, and this keeps on progressing forwards. So when this progresses forwards, it creates an electrical current, and this electrical current which is created is known as a wave front. So this wave front which is generated for each muscle fiber is summed up, and this can be detected using a galvanometer, which is nothing but an instrument which detects electrical current. So with this galvanometer, this summation of all these transmembrane ionic currents can be depicted on an ECG paper. So this is the basic concept behind ECG. So when these cardiac muscle fibers are generated within the heart, their transmission towards the skin can be hindered because of certain factors. So these factors are important because they help to diagnose which part of the heart is affected and how do we measure each electrical impulse generated by each part of the heart. So the most important thing is connective tissues around the heart and the adipose tissue in the subcutaneous tissue also, which hinder the transmission of electrical current towards the skin. So that is one thing. And then there's something called resistivity. So resistivity is nothing but resistance per meter square. So in humans, the resistance of human body is around 100 kilo ohms. So this is quite a high resistance. So only 1% of the amplitude of electrical current which is generated within the heart is transmitted to the skin. The next thing is preferential electrical activity can be seen in certain parts of the heart. So for example, in the right parasternal region, electrodes can pick up electrical activities in the right ventricle, preferentially in the right ventricle, and in the precordial leads, depending on where it is placed, it can be the anteroseptal region, the left ventricle, etc. And the next thing is, as you all know, heart is unique and it is a 3-dimensional structure, and these electrical currents which are generated in 2-dimensional way can be cancelled with each other. So they say this current goes like this, and then there's another current which goes like this, and these two get cancelled. So in this cancellation, around 90% of this electrical activity is cancelled, and that cannot be measured. So only a minimal amount of cardiac activity is measured. So that is around 10%. So now let us talk about the electrodes and the lead system. So most commonly and the standard lead system which is used is the 12-lead system. So what are the 12 leads? The 3 limb leads, which is 1, 2 and 3. The 3 augmented limb leads, the AVR, AVL and AVF, and the 6 chest leads. So these six chest leads are also called as the precordial leads. So because precordium is the region of the chest which is anterior to the heart, so since these leads are placed over that area, they're called precordial leads, or they are also known as exploring leads. Exploring leads. So three limbs. So now we'll talk about each lead. So these are the three main limb leads. These, and for each lead, there has to be a closed circuit. So that means there has to be a negative input and a positive input. So for lead 1, the positive input is the left arm and the negative input is the right arm. For lead 2, the positive input is the left leg and the negative input is the right arm. For lead 3, the positive input is the left leg and the negative input is the left arm. And for augmented limb leads, they are called augmented limb leads because the negative input is a combination of two other limbs, and the positive is similar to the limb leads, just one limb. So AVR, the positive lead would be the right arm and the negative would be both left arm and left leg. For AVL, positive is left arm and negative would be right arm plus left leg. For AVF, the positive would be left leg and the negative input would be the left arm plus right arm. So as you can see here, all these things are permutation of three limbs of the body. So what is left out here is the right leg. So right leg is not considered and it is taken as the earth. So that is the grounding, and there no leads is connected. But during routine practice, you can see a black lead which is placed in the right leg. So now coming to this most important part, the direction of each lead. So this is important because ECG has got an axis and there is a direction of current. So this is called an electrical vector. So this is important to understand. So here you can see the main leads here. So say this is right and this is left. So this would be lead 1, the vector, electrical vector generated for lead 1, and this would be lead 3 and this would be lead 2. So how do we get this? Based on this left arm to right arm, so we get this left arm to right arm, so we get an electrical vector there. So now this triangle is generated here. So this is known as the Etherwin's triangle. Etherwin's triangle. Now if you look at this triangle, it's nothing but vectors and its summation. So you can add any two vectors and get the third vector. So you can see here, if you add 1 plus 3, so if you add 1 plus 3, you get 2. So this is nothing but Etherwin's triangle, where it shows the relation between the three limb leads, that is lead 1 vector plus the lead 3 vector gives you lead 2 vector. So now let's talk about the chest leads. So say this is the cross section of the chest and there's a vertebra here, this is right and left. So here this is the sternum, so this would be V1, this would be V2, V3, V4, V5 and V6. And this usually V6 is considered as the 0 degree vector, and V1 and V5 would be the 30 degree, this would be 60 degree and this would be 75 degree and so on. So these would be the vectors. So when you, as you all know, vector is nothing but an magnitude having a specific direction. So the direction here is depicted with respect to these angles. So now another thing which is important to know is something known as extended lead system. So what is extended lead system? It is nothing but this 12 lead system plus certain other leads are placed to get a whole and the whole picture of the heart. For example, left posterior part of the left ventricle usually cannot be made out using the normal 12 lead system. So we can place certain leads which are V7, V8, V9 along the left posterior torso, and we can get that system. And also for the right ventricle we can place something known as the right precordial leads and also assess that. So this could be important to localize lesions in myocardial infarction where there is a posterior lateral infarct, so which can be known by this extended lead system, plus 3 other leads which would be 7, 8 and 9. So now we'll come to the calculation of electrical axis in some time. So now let's go and find out just 2 minutes on the physiology behind electrical conduction. So as you all know, electrical conduction starts from this pacemaker of the heart called the sinoatrial node. From here it goes to the AV node here. So this is the AV node. And for the left atrium to contract, there is a separate bundle which goes to the left atrium known as Bachmann's bundle. So this becomes important for atrial pathologies where there can be certain changes which can be seen in ECG, which we'll discuss in subsequent videos. So now from AV node goes through bundle of His, which is again divided into right branch and left branch, and then it goes along the ventricular wall and then supplies all the Purkinje fibers. So this is the basic conduction system of the heart. So and as you all know from your physiology days, so this is the electrical cardiac action potential. So if you look at this, whenever during cardiac whenever the impulse is generated, there is a change in the ionic channels along the cell membrane. So during phase 1 there is a peak here, so there is efflux of potassium ions. That means potassium ions go out. So when this happens, there is positive charge generated because potassium being positive is moved out. And then after this there is influx of calcium and sodium. So now that potassium has gone out and calcium and sodium are coming in, there is relative negative charge which is being created, and this creates a plateau phase here. So it's a plateau phase. And then in phase 3 there is efflux of potassium occurring again, which is more than the influx of calcium and sodium. So this results in a negative phase. And phase 4 is bringing back to normal because of sodium potassium pump, ATPase pump. So this is important and to know about each stage of ECG. So if you draw an ECG in accordance with this, so this would be the P wave here. If you look at the same time interval, this is what the ECG looks like, and then here there is a ventricular repolarization. So there is QRS complex. Sorry. So here there is a QRS complex and T wave. So this is how the ECG is with reference to this electrical action potential. So before we go further, let's discuss some MCQs regarding this basics. So first MCQ, electrical activity in AV node is manifested in which wave of ECG? So as you all know, this is the ECG. So here SA node gives impulse to the atrium, and this represents the atrial depolarization. and this represents ventricular depolarization. So anything between this atrial and ventricular depolarization should indicate AV node electrical transmission. So this segment here represents AV node transmission. So what represents AV node transmission? The segment between P wave and the beginning of QRS represents AV node transmission. What are exploring leads? So as I told you already, chest leads are also called as exploring leads. So V1 to V6 are known as exploring leads. They are also known as precordial leads. What affects the change of depolarization from endocardium to epicardium? So this is an MCQ, and we'll discuss this later. So what the question is asking is, so this is the cardiac left ventricular wall. So it is asking whenever there is electrical activity, it can either go from endocardium to epicardium or epicardium to endocardium. So normally what happens is, when there is electrical generation from the bundle of is going towards the Purkinje fibers, there is transmission from endocardium to epicardium, and when it reaches epicardium, the electrical activity gets dispersed to other cardiac areas. So when this time taken from this for the depolarization from endocardium to epicardium is known as intrinsicoid deflection. Intrinsicoid deflection. So this is also known as peak R time. So we'll discuss this again later in detail when we discuss QRS morphology. So intrinsicoid deflection is nothing but the change in the peak of depolarization wave in the ventricle, because the electrical current going from endocardium to epicardium after reaching epicardium is getting dispersed to other cardiac areas. So now we'll discuss about normal ECG. So as you all know, normal ECG, this is a normal ECG. So this is P wave, this is Q wave, R wave, S wave, this is T wave, and this is U wave. U wave may or may not be seen, it is physiological. So in general, P wave is because of atrial depolarization, QRS complex is because of ventricular depolarization, T wave is because of ventricular repolarization, and U wave is because of late repolarization of Purkinje fibers. So this is the basic idea behind ECG, and the important thing to know here is what are the different components and segments behind this ECG. So you have to know something known as PR segment. So PR segment would be beginning of P wave to R wave, beginning of R wave here. So this would be PR segment. So next coming to ST segment. ST segment would be from this end of S to beginning of T, ST segment. Then what is QT interval? Beginning from Q and ending of Q to ending of T. So this is QT interval. So this would be PR, ST, QT. So this becomes important because certain diseases have their own characteristic changes which can be seen in these segments. So now you should know something about this ECG paper. So ECG paper is you can see here, each big block contains 5 small blocks in x-axis and 5 small blocks in y-axis. So this x-axis represents time and y-axis represents the voltage amplitude. So the time, each small box represents 40 milliseconds, and each voltage in y-axis represents 0.1 volts. Sorry, 0.1 millivolts. So this and this becomes important to calculate the heart rate, because since x-axis is time, if we know RR interval, we can calculate the heart rate. So as you all know, this is how a classic 12 lead ECG strip looks like. Here I'll tell you what are the things you have to look for when you read an ECG during this 12 lead system. So the first and foremost thing you have to look for is something known as calibration. So calibration is the ECG machine which records the ECG must tell you that it is calibrated properly, and then these voltages which are shown here is taken according to scale. So this square graph here which is seen in the beginning of ECG depicts calibration. So this should represent a height of 2 big squares. If it is exactly 2 big squares, see, you can see here, this is 1 big square and this is next big square, so it's 2 big squares. So if it is 2 big squares, it indicates that the ECG is calibrated correctly. So before reading ECG, you have to always look at the calibration. The next thing is, these are the limb leads, 1, 2 and lead 3. These are the augmented leads, and these are chest leads, V1 to V6. So now we'll come to each of this in detail. So we'll start with the P wave. So P wave represents atrial depolarization, and normal P wave duration is less than 120 milliseconds. So this P wave can have different morphologies based on different abnormalities of the atrium. So what you have to remember right now is P wave indicates atrial depolarization. And this one important point you have to remember is in V1, that is in chest lead 1, so these are also MCQ points. In lead V1, P wave can be biphasic. Why is it biphasic in V1? Because as you all know, as I told you during electrical conduction, from SA node, for the cardiac impulse to get transmitted to left atrium, it goes via the route that is Bachmann bundle. So during this transmission, there's a slight delay in depolarization of left atrium compared to right atrium. So the P wave, instead of being a monophasic wave, it can be a biphasic wave. A prominent P wave peak because of this biphasic nature is again abnormal, which we'll learn later. It's called P mitral. So this is about P wave. So once this P wave is done, once atrial depolarization happens, now ventricular depolarization comes. At the same time, atrial repolarization also occurs, but this is not seen because it is masked by this QRS complex. This QRS complex masks atrial repolarization. Why does it mask? Because the voltage of ventricular depolarization is much higher than atrial repolarization. Atrial repolarization is maybe around only less than 100 millivolts, but this is much higher compared to that. So now we'll move on to QRS complex. So QRS complex represents ventricular depolarization. So QRS complex indicates ventricular depolarization. So you have to know what is this QRS complex. So the initial downward deflection, this is the Q wave. The subsequent a positive R peak is known as R wave, and the subsequent negative wave is called as S wave. So this is QRS complex. So what you have to know regarding this QRS complex is certain how do you name this QRS complex. So if there is a, for example, in pulmonary thromboembolism you get RSR pattern, what is small r and what is capital R. So we'll discuss that now. So whenever you talk about a QRS complex, this whole depolarization indicates transmural electrical transmission plus the endocardial activation. So this together gives you the QRS complex. So activation and electrical current in the transmural muscle fibers plus the electrical activity in the endocardium. So this together gives you QRS complex. So now the initial negative wave is known as Q wave. The subsequent positive wave or the first positive wave is known as R wave. The next negative wave, or you can tell the first negative wave after a positive wave, is S. And whenever it's a tall wave, it's usually given as a positive nomenclature, and if it's a small wave, it's given a lower value. So for example, this is QRS complex, which is normal. So if we talk about RSR pattern, if we talk about RSR pattern, so initially there's a R and SR. So this would be an RSR pattern. So R is capital because it's a tall wave, and S again being tall, and then R is small here, so it's represented as a small alphabet. So this is how the nomenclature goes. So I'll repeat once more. The first negative wave is the Q wave, the first positive wave is the R wave, the first negative wave after a positive wave is the S wave. So that's it, it's very simple. So now we have to know something about intrinsicoid deflection, which I told you. So this is a intrinsicoid deflection. So this is quite a conceptual topic. So as you all know, this is the cardiac ventricle muscle fiber, and the electrical activity goes like this. This is the endocardium, this is the epicardium. So whenever there's electrical activity going, it goes from endocardium towards the epicardium. So when this happens, there is a big positive wave here. Once it reaches R wave, this corresponds to electrical activity reaching the epicardium. So once this happens, this whole electrical current gets dissipated to other cardiac areas. So when this happens, this positive deflection stops and there is a drastic negative deflection. So intrinsicoid deflection, also known as peak R time, is nothing but the time taken for depolarization from endocardium to epicardium. So that is peak R time. So this peak R time. So this is why this R wave is initially positive and later goes down and becomes S wave, which is negative wave. So this is an important concept. They can ask MCQs on this, saying what is peak R time, what is it useful for. So this is so it becomes useful to calculate something in abnormalities such as ventricular hypertrophy. So when there is ventricular hypertrophy, you get that M pattern, W pattern, which is in bundle branch block, and in ventricular hypertrophy you can find this time taken for this is increased. So there's this QRS becomes broader, and we'll discuss that later during when we discuss abnormal ECGs. So now the most important part is how to calculate the electrical axis. So electrical axis is nothing but if you take all the electrical currents in the heart and then add all those together, if you get the resultant vector, it gives you the electrical axis of the heart. So the normal electrical axis of the heart should be within -30 to +90. So this is the normal electrical activity of the heart. It has to be within minus 30 to plus 90. Anything beyond this minus 30, so minus 30 to minus 45 is known as left axis deviation. So we can call this moderate left axis deviation, and this would be severe left axis deviation. From plus 90 to 180 would be right axis deviation. Again, till plus 120 you can call it moderate, and then later on it can be severe. From 180 plus 180 to minus 90 is extreme axis deviation. Extreme axis deviation. So how do we calculate the axis of the heart using ECG? So there are different methods. There is something known as the thumb rule. So we'll discuss that now. So first we'll talk something known as the quadrant method. So what is quadrant method? You have to look at two waves. You look at only two waves in quadrant method. So what waves you look at? You look at one lead one wave and you look at AVF. So you look at only these two waves. So if lead 1 is positive, then you have to look at the deflection. So here lead 1 is a positive deflection because positive is more than is negative. And AVF, you have to look at AVF. This would be a positive AVF because there is positive deflection along AVF. So if lead 1 is positive and AVF is positive, your axis would be normal. If lead 1 is positive and AVF is negative, it would be a possible left axis deviation. If lead 1 is negative and AVF is positive, it is right axis deviation. If both are negative, it is extreme axis deviation. So you have to remember this table is very important. This uses just two leads. So the next method which I'm going to teach you uses 3 leads, so that it can be difficult to remember, but this is very easy to remember. So let's look at this ECG. Lead 1 is positive, AVF is positive. So this is normal axis. This is a normal axis ECG. So now we look at left axis deviation. So in left axis deviation, lead 1 being positive and AVF being negative. So this you can indicate possible left axis. So I say possible here because let's go back here. So as you can see here, 0 to minus 30 is also considered normal axis. So if lead 1 is positive and AVF is negative, it indicates that it's between 0 and minus 90. So it can be here also. So you can't say for sure it is left axis deviation. You can say it could be possible left axis deviation. To be sure, you have to see lead 2 also, which we'll see in the next method, which is a more accurate method. So it could be possible left axis deviation. Lead 1 being negative and AVF being positive indicates right axis deviation. So lead 1, this being negative and this being positive, indicates right axis deviation. In extreme axis deviation, both are negative, lead 1 and AVF being negative. So now let's come to the next method. So this is a more accurate method. So this is known as the 3 lead system. 3 lead method. So in 3 lead method, we see lead 1, lead 2, AVF. Instead of AVF, we can also see lead 3 also, but this would be better. So now let's talk about normal variant. So in normal variant, lead 1 is positive, lead 2 is positive, and AVF is positive. So this is normal. So in normal, lead 1 is positive, lead 2 is positive, and AVF is positive. And next, coming to left axis deviation. So to tell that the ECG is pathologically left axis deviated, lead 1 is positive, lead 2 is negative, and AVF is negative. For right axis deviation, lead 1 is negative, lead 2 is positive, and AVF is positive. For extreme axis deviation, all are negative. All are negative. So this table is very important. This table is very important. Let's revise again. For normal ECG, lead 1 would be positive, lead 2 would be positive, AVF is positive. All three are positive. For left axis deviation, lead 1 is positive, lead 2 is negative, AVF is negative. In case lead 1 is positive, lead 2 is positive, and AVF is negative, it could be physiological left axis deviation. That means it comes between that 0 to plus 30 degrees. 0 to minus 30 degrees. For right axis deviation, lead 1 is negative, lead 2 is positive, and AVF is positive. So this would be the right axis deviation. It is beyond plus 90. For extreme axis deviation, all are negative. So this would mean it falls between plus 180 and minus 90. So let's look at this ECG. So what do we see first? We look at the three axes. Lead 1 is positive, lead 2 is negative, AVF is negative. As you can see, that's self-explanatory. So this would mean it is pathological left axis deviation. So now next, so let's look at this. Lead 1 is negative, lead 2 is positive, AVF is positive. So what does this mean? This means it is right axis deviation. This would mean it is right axis deviation. Okay, now let's look at this ECG. Lead 1 is negative, lead 2 is negative. Why? Because there is negative AVR. AVF is negative. Why? So you can see here there is a negative deflection. Predominantly is negative. So all three being negative indicates it is extreme axis deviation. Extreme axis deviation. All three being negative. Okay, so that was about the axis interpretation. So we learned about P wave morphology, PR interval, QRS morphology, and axis. So now there is something known as QT interval. So before we come to T wave, we will learn about QT interval. So QT interval is, it can be prolonged. It's nothing but interval from the ending of Q wave to the ending of T wave. So why is it important? It can, any changes in QT interval, there are certain specific causes. For example, certain drugs can cause QT interval prolongation. So how do we calculate QT interval? There are certain formulas to calculate QT interval. Normally, QT interval can change from each beat to each beat. So it can change from 50 to 65 milliseconds. So QT interval can change from 50 to 65 milliseconds. So it is not possible to calculate QT interval for each graph paper. So there's certain formulas to calculate QT interval. So I'll discuss only one formula. You should know the name, Bezet's formula. So in this QT, so since with each beat QT interval changes, you should calculate something known as QT interval corrected is equal to QT of one beat divided by square root of RR interval. So everything in seconds. So this would be Bezet's formula, that is corrected QT interval. Why do we measure corrected QT interval? Because QT interval changes with each beat. It can change from 50 to 65 milliseconds normally. So corrected QT interval is equal to QT of 1 beat divided by square root of RR interval. That is one. There are other formulas also. American Cardiology Association has also given a formula which is beyond the scope of this video. It's not required for this level. And there's another formula, Frederick's formula. Just remember the name. No need to learn the formula. Frederick's formula. So this is important. Bezet's formula is important. So now coming to this could be a potential MCQ. So there's something known as QRST angle. So as you all know, this vector is not just a two-dimensional vector which is on a piece of paper. Human body is three-dimensional, of course. So this vector, the sum total of all the vectors can be plotted in a three-dimensional plane. So there's an angle which is generated between this QRS and the ST segment. So this angle between these two is known as QRST angle. So how do we measure this? We can't measure on a piece of paper, so a computer has to do it for us and measure this angle. So what is the importance of this angle? There are normal angles. So normally in males and females, this angle, in males it is 107 and in females it is 90 normally. So in case this angle is increased QRST angle can lead to increased atherosclerotic risk. Sclerotic risk, that is cardiac coronary artery disease in future. So increased QRST angle leads to increased coronary artery disease risk in future. So how did they find this out? They find this out using a study known as NHANES study. So this study, NHANES study 3, showed that increase in QRST angle leads to increase in atherosclerotic risk in future. So before we finish this video with this MCQ, I'll talk about how do we calculate the heart rate in a ECG. So this is very important. Heart rate, you can, if the rhythm of the patient is normal, you can take any 2 RR interval, that is, so any 2 RR interval and calculate the heart rate. But in case there is any arrhythmias such as atrial fibrillation or any other heart blocks, you can't measure this because it changes between each heartbeat. So in that case, you should take something known as a 6-second ECG strip and calculate the heart rate. So now let's see how do we calculate the heart rate. So this simple formula which you can calculate based on the small square showing the time. So this is the time. So heart rate is equal to 300 divided by number of big box between RR, or RR is equal to 1500 divided by number of small box in RR. So these two are the important formulas for to calculate heart rate. Heart rate is 300 divided by number of big bucks between two RR intervals, and or it can also be 1500 divided by number of small bucks between RR interval. So as I told you, in case of arrhythmias, to calculate the heart rate you have to take a 6-second ECG strip. So once you do that 6-second ECG strip, you get a piece of ECG strip, calculate the number of R waves in 6 seconds, and you can calculate the heart rate. So heart rate would be 10 into number of R in 6 seconds. So heart rate would be number of so for example here there are 4 R waves in a 6-second strip, so 4 into 10, 40, so 40 would be your heart rate. So this is how you calculate heart rate. So now we'll discuss certain MCQs regarding ECG. So here you have to know, so before you start solving this MCQ, I'll give you certain tips on how you should go about reading MCQ. So the first point you have to look at is calibration. The second point would be calculate the heart rate. The third point is look for rhythm, whether it is regular or irregular. And the fourth would be look at each morphology. So if you go point wise and in this form, you won't miss any abnormalities in ECG. So let's look at this question. 35-year-old man came to your OPD for routine health check. Comment on his ECG, and the options could be like 1, there's right axis deviation, 2, there's left axis deviation, 3, there's a normal ECG, and 4, cannot comment on the ECG. So as I said, we'll follow these 4 points and then we'll look at this ECG. So first, calibration. As you can see here, this is 2 large squares, so this is calibration is normal. And second, heart rate. How do we calculate heart rate? I just told you, you can calculate based on this RR interval. Next, rhythm. This looks like a normal rhythm, which is regular. You can see the RR interval, they're all regular. Next, the morphology. So under this, the first thing you have to look for is axis. So to look for axis, we look at lead 1, lead 2, AVF. Lead 1 is positive, lead 2 is positive, AVF is positive. So all 3 is positive, indicates that the axis is normal. So this is a normal axis. Next, we'll come to each individual morphology. So let's look at P wave first. P wave is normal. There is no notching of P wave, there is no P mitral. PR interval is normal, there is no prolongation. QRS is normal again. This is how it has to be. There is no W pattern or M pattern, there is no bundle branch block, there is no ventricular hypertrophy. ST segment is normal, there is no ST segment elevation or depression. T wave again is normal, there is no T wave inversion, no peak T wave. It's a normal morphology of a T wave. And look for any specific signs or other patterns. So essentially this is a normal ECG. So your answer would be this is a normal ECG. So we'll look at the next question. Okay, what does the given ECG show? So your options are 1 left axis deviation, 2 right axis deviation, 3 intermediate axis deviation, 4 extreme axis deviation. So let's look at this ECG again very closely. Lead 1, lead 2 and AVF. Lead 1 is, so this is something known as an ectopic, so you should not consider this. Look at the other regular waves. So there's predominant negative deflection in lead 1. Lead 1 negative. Lead 2 is positive. AVF is positive. This is an ectopic, omit it. AVF is positive. So negative, lead to positive, positive indicates a right axis deviation. Right axis deviation. So this is very important how to read ECGs. So thank you, and that's all for this video. In subsequent video we'll learn about abdominal ECG, and very important for NEET PG examination, what are heart blocks, how do we read myocardial infarction, and we'll solve MCQs, and there are certain patterns which in ECG which you all have to know, so we'll read that later in the next video. Thank you.